back in the 1950s, most people aren't aware of it, but there was a scientific storm in America all through the late 50s about this thing out there in space, because the astronomers were all watching it, and that was back when they weren't afraid to talk about it. It was in the science magazines. I mean, I had a subscription to, like, Popular Science, and hell, it was on the front cover of the magazine one day in, like, 1961. And I was really excited when I saw it, because here's this giant red planet on the horizon of the California coast, and a humongous tidal wave coming in towards the coast, and having grew up in the mountains of the Sierras, and this thing in the magazine, it said this tidal wave coming in was going to be at least 3 miles high, and I went in and showed it to everybody in the house, and they laughed, and they said, we live in a solar system. We've got 9 planets and a big sun. This thing has got 7 planets and its own sun. I think this one is just a big, bright, reddish-orange iron ball because it's giving off all this red iron oxide dust out into the atmosphere. At first, it was just a teeny little red speck of fuzzy red dust in the distance, but over the years, as it went by and we watched it, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then finally, about 2008, we could see this thing like it was across the street, and we could see that it was a blazing hot ball of fire giving out sparkles of red iron oxide dust for thousands of miles in every direction. And you could see the planet circulating it. Now, I'll tell you one thing that I really am nervous about. I think this thing's got a planet like ours circling it. This is its own solar system. We're about to have a solar system come through the middle of our solar system. This can't be good. But unfortunately, it looks as though that's what's going to happen. Hopefully nothing in this mess will hit us, even though it does say it will in the Bible, leastwise it does in my Bible. It says we can expect all kinds of problems. We were looking at asteroids. Right close to this thing, there's asteroids that are floating around right near that are orbiting the main sun itself. These things appear to be about 500 miles across. And as you go back into the tail, you get into meteorites that go back for millions of miles in the tail. This thing looks like a giant red teardrop-shaped dust cloud. And you can see, once if you're able to see it up close like we did, you can see every speck out there. I guarantee you there's trillions of meteorites following this thing. Now, these CIA people that I know say that we're not going to be that close to it when it goes past us. They're saying that in order to attain breakaway speed, when it comes up around the backside of the sun, its speed will at least double, possibly more, which will put it here earlier than everybody is saying it will, and that this thing will probably be about 20 million miles from us when it crosses in front of us. And then as soon as it flips us upside down, we're going to go into its debris field tail and be pelted with meteorites. And, of course, in the Bible it says they will talon 70 pounds. So if you've got 70-pound meteorites falling like hail, and I can guarantee you they will be falling like hail because there are that many in the tail of this thing. This thing has got a tail loaded with trash. I mean, it's incredible the amount of stuff that's in this thing's tail. And we're going to go right through that tail, and if it doesn't beat everything on the surface of the ground into a flat putty, I don't know what it'll take. I tell everybody, you better be at least 20, 30, 40, 50 feet on the ground and have either concrete or stone above you, because it'll break through the roof or whatever you've got if you don't. These CIA guys told me that this pole shift will probably happen from start to finish in around 28 minutes. That doesn't give you a lot of warning. When you see that thing out there in the sky, you're going to have to run as fast as you can to your underground facility, because this is going to happen so fast. Now, see, here's another thing nobody's talking about. You've got this giant iron planet that they say is 47,000 miles across, getting ready to come up past us, And when it starts to approach us, it's going to start and have real serious effects.
So is it a planet or a failed star?
It's not a failed star. I saw this thing up close. It did not look like a failed star. It looked just like our sun.
Right.
Okay. Would you call our sun a failed star?
No. Okay. Well, you had said planet. I wasn't sure if it was like a failed star brown dwarf or a full sun. So it's a full sun?
It looks to me like a miniature sun, just like the one we have. The only difference is our sun is giving off flames and stuff, and this one's doing the same thing as it, but it's giving off this apparent that this thing is just orange hot. I mean, to tell how hot it is, I was told that they estimated between 5 and 10 million degrees, but, I don't really know, if that's right or not. I mean, it's got to be pretty hot because it's sending all of this red iron oxide dust out into space around it.
Right.
And it's got this enormous, and I mean enormous, at least 50 or 100,000 miles on each side of it, this red dust cloud that goes all the way around it. I know when we were watching it, as it started to make the upward swing to approach behind our sun, it was amazing. The red dust cloud settled down. Instead of being round, it started to settle down into a V, like wings, upside-down wings.
Right.
And I thought, boy, I wonder if that's where the ancient Sumerians got the idea this thing had wings, because, centrifugal force is a funny thing. When it comes back up around the planet, when we see it in the sky, my guess is it's going to look like it's got wings, because centrifugal force is going to be pulling the red iron oxide dust and particles out to one side, and then as it starts to climb out and go away from us, listen, I was told that this thing's magnetic field is going to be so strong, anybody that does not have a padded lead helmet to wear will have their brain gutted for everything they ever knew, and they'll be a complete raving moron after this thing passes. They'll they won't know, they'll pee in their pants. They won't have a clue what's going on, because this thing will gut their brain. And I was reading a deal in my Bible. It says that after this happens, that nobody will care because they won't be able to remember it. Well, of course, I was told by somebody the reason that is because the electromagnetic field from this thing will be so strong, because, see, as it comes up underneath of us, it's going to start and pull us toward it. And then, just like a pair of big magnets, all of a sudden it's going to lock onto us. And when it does, it's going to be like the Jolly Green Giant hit the earth in the ass. It's going to send a jolt 500 to 1,000 foot high. This is what I'm told. 500 to 1,000 foot high shock waves all the way around planet Earth. They'll be so bad that in a lot of areas that don't have good solid soil, it'll fluff it so badly that you'll practically be like you're standing in quicksand. And that this thing's magnetic field will literally gut your brain of everything. And so you may want to give some thoughts to getting you some sheet lead, build you a little lead helmet to wear, like a little motorcycle helmet to protect your entire brain and the back of your neck, so that way this can't happen. Because, if these guys are right about this, and I'm pretty sure they are, because I know for a fact they know what they're talking about when they say stuff. And and it does sound reasonable to me, knowing what I do about electromagnetic energy, that this could happen. And it very easily could gut everybody's brain for everything they ever knew, and they'll stand there and pee in their pants and go, gee, what was that? And that's if they still know how to talk. And there won't be any doubt in anybody's mind, because this thing's going to look like a big red dragon, exactly like all the ancient Sumerians and the Chinese and all the rest of them that had documented this thing's passing before. It didn't look like a white ball or a snow cloud or nothing. It looked like a big red iron oxide dust cloud with a superheated star in the middle of it. And I mean, and that's what we've seen. So, I don't care what anybody else says. There's a possibility. There's more than one thing out there. I watched it through the Hubble Space Telescope, and when this thing looked like it was across the street, the Hubble got cut off and they encrypted it, and that was the end of any transmissions we had to watch. And we know that the Hubble, in order to be in the shadow of the Earth, had to be at an angle, and so that meant it was looking downward, and this thing was coming up underneath of us. And I tell you the honest to God truth, I personally think this thing is real close to us right now, but you know, that's just my general feeling that you know, and I'm a pretty psychic guy. I have the feeling that this thing is right close by and that we're going to see it any time. I mean, I've been doing everything I could do to get prepared for it. I'm really worried about what Jesus says. You know, when the fig tree is putting on its leaves, know that summer is near, and I'm at your door. And that worries me more than probably anything I've read in the Bible about this whole thing, the parable of the fig tree, because everything seems to be in place for this thing's arrival. And the bad thing is, he says, I'm going to come like a thief in the night. Well, it does also say in the Bible that I'm going to make the sun go down at noontime in Jerusalem. Okay, if that's the case, there's only one thing that'll make the sun go down, not hit the horizon, down, go down at noontime, and that's if the planet experiences a pole shift.
Okay, I got a quick question that you can probably answer really quickly and then continue from the chat room. Wants to know if you're talking about Planet X or Elenin, and I don't think, I've never thought Elenin is Planet X. Cheryl's pretty stuck on that, but I think Elenin, as a result of it, it's a comet that's been kicked in.
Elenin is extinction level event Nibiru is near.
Right.
Does that explain it?
Yeah.
Okay, because listen, they've known about this thing forever. And I mean, they've known about it forever. I mean, if I read about it in a science magazine in 1961, that tells you that, I mean, it's only 1,800 years away. How could they not be able to see it when it came around the backside of the last sun and headed this way?
Right.
You have to know they've been watching it, because if you know, Carl Sagan was showing stuff that they took with their old telescopes that was billions and billions of miles away, and this thing's only 1,800 years away. Well, and by 1930 it was only 70 years away. You know, we do estimate that this thing, let me give you a thing, maybe you can figure out your own timeline. We estimated that this thing is traveling around 3,500 miles an hour, okay?
Okay.
That was our estimate of its speed. Now, it has been picking up speed, and that's the reason why we think it's going to arrive early, because when it comes around the backside of the sun, it's got to double that speed in order to attain breakaway speed to leave the sun and not wind up orbiting it. It's never orbited the sun in the past that we know of, so that means that it's going to have to attain breakaway speed to head back out into space. Now, you look at the NASA videos, photos, and all this other crap those morons put on the internet. This thing is coming in, it's going to, as soon as it goes around the top of the sun, it's going to go back out into space.
Right.
And it's going to do this really fast. When it goes past us, it's going to go past us so fast that we'll almost have no time to get ready. That's my opinion, but, you know, just drawing it out on paper a few times and thinking about it, and I went, you know, if this thing picks up enough speed to make breakaway speed, then that means it's going to come past us. You know, this thing, according to what I was told, is that this thing is approximately 47,000 miles in diameter, you know, 4 or 5 times the size of the Earth, and it'll come past us, and we won't have a lot of warning, and we won't get to see it in the sky until it's on us. I think the NASA timeline is completely off. I think this thing is going to arrive much earlier than they say it is. You know, I know they're saying October, but, you know, if you look at the, you know, now, I was told that the poles are not shifting at 42 miles a year. They're shifting at 42 miles a day. And the reason is because this planet is rolling over to face this thing. Now, when it goes by, it's not going to push our North Pole away. It's going to grab our southern pole with its northern pole, and it's going to be like somebody kicked this planet in the ass. That earthquake that it talks about in Revelations, when the opening of the sixth seal comes, from what I've been told, that's very accurate, because that's exactly what's going to happen. There's going to be a massive earthquake when it locks onto us. As it goes past us, we're going to follow it right upside down. The oceans are just going to be roaring from pole to pole, as you could well guess they would, because if you take a planet that's 7,000 miles across and roll it upside down in 30 minutes, you're going to have some...
Let's go to Chris in North Carolina. You're on the air. Welcome.
Yes, sirs. This question's for Dan or Steve Quell. Sorry, I say Dan Quell. That's weird.
It's okay. Dan Quell's. Go ahead.
My question is, do you think the government already knows about an impending doom from Islamic terrorists in the Jade Helm area? Do you think that's going to implement martial law?
Well, I think it's going to be one of the things that springboards us into martial law. And, you can't say ISIS an open border with any type of intellectual or emotional or moral integrity. Why have the borders not been secured? Alex has had people on. I've talked to them, interviewed them, read their emails on the air. They're basically saying if we arrest anybody who's a known terrorist, and I'm not talking about Latinos or Hispanics, they're talking about someone comes in from the State Department and orders them let go. So the point is absolutely ISIS. Here's the point in terror. Terror is ultimately to bring about submission, and that's what they're trying to do. We see it in the politics of radical Islam in the United States. We see it all through the Middle East. And the point is we could have stopped this. And if anybody remembers, Alex, remember the long victory parade, 4.5 miles long, of ISIS and their captured U.S. stuff in Iraq? And
yes.
And people were saying, why didn't we hit them then? Well, simply because the powers that be in this country, deep down, they are Satanists, and they're going to use everybody. It goes right back to Albert Pike's statement, turn the Muslims against the Jews, Jews against Christians, and when everybody wipes out everybody, we bring on Lucifer, the true God. And I'm not going to argue with anybody. That's immoral.
Well, sure, that's what they're doing. And then people say, Alex, you're the guy that exposed false flag terror on 9/11. Why are you saying ISIS is real? They have raised this al-Qaeda jihadi army. They've changed the name to ISIS and Islamic State to confuse the public. I think Colonel Schaefer on, you name it, the Pentagon knows, 90+% of the Free Syrian Army is al-Qaeda, is ISIS. And so our government's funding them. They let them come in. They let them attack. No need to even stage an event now because the upstream, they created them, allowed them to operate through Saudi funding, through NATO funding. Then they can take our liberties in the response to ISIS. And ISIS, in return, is given part of the Middle East as their payoff for being the secret army that destabilizes the West so a police state can be put in place. And that's the bottom line of what's happening. Separately, though, it just shows what a farce Homeland Security is because they say their main mission is who? Those of us that don't want to go along with the New World Order. Thank you, Chris. Let's talk to Michael in Mississippi. You're on the air. Go ahead.
Hey, Alex. Hey, Steve. Steve, I had a question. I've listened to several interviews with Bob Fletcher, including the one you did on the Hagman show. And Bob Fletcher's pretty much put his investigative credibility and reputation on the line about an incoming celestial event that he believes martial law must be established or set in place.
That's right. A lot of folks think there's a asteroid coming in or something. What do you know about that?
Well, years ago I talked specifically about Nibiru. That's the official ancient name, the 10th planet.
Planet X.
Planet X, Gabriel's fist, Lucifer's hammer, and based on what a Navy SEAL, I posted on my alert site, Navy SEAL explains a big event as being that, okay? In other words, Alex, they know of all the earth changes that are going to be happening. They know of all of the electrical discharges. They know of Roche's, R-O-C-H-E's limit. And the point is that the whole universe, if you want to look at it real simply, is go and look up Velikovsky, Worlds in Collision, and then the time of this is interesting because we've heard, both of us from separate sources, that they're stocking their underground.
Well, sure. And how many record blood moons have there been?
Well, what is it? 3? The 4th is coming up.
I mean, I don't even put stake in all this, but the elites do. They're obsessed with it all. Final segment of the main radio broadcast. We're in a little 5-minute overdrive that's internet only. Infowars.com/show. Well, some stations carry the 4th hour, so that's not quite true. I want to thank all of our affiliates out there. Be sure and support them. Be sure and support the sponsors, spread the word. Some of the stories up on Infowars.com. Explosive new documents reveal Obama Clinton spin and lies on Benghazi. Al Gore's climate change lies exposed. The latest on that. Now he says in a few more years we'll be all flooded and dead, basically. Of course, he said in 2007 it would be by 2013. Leftists exploit biker bloodbaths to complain about white privilege. They say, why isn't the National Guard out on the street? Because they arrested everybody. It happened in a localized area. It isn't just random people going out and burning stuff. It was a outlaw motorcycle gang impromptu rally. And the whole thing's very suspicious. Now they got a giant rot rally coming up in Austin, Texas, and who knows what's going to happen with that. Most of the bike riders are great people. I don't care if you want to wear an outfit and be part of a club. Talking about the criminal groups claim they're anti-establishment, but all I see is them working with the establishment with their drug dealing and all the rest of it. Going back to Steve Quayle, we're taking phone calls. Steve, what do you think is really going on with this? I mean, you say you have some questions about it. Why does everything keep popping up in Texas?
Well, I think that Texas, number one, has one of the strongest real-based economies in the world without massive amounts of debt. Number two, it's the spirit of the Alamo. Number three, it basically is because if that secret agreement that is in place that I've been told that you've been affirmed that it is too, to return Azatlan to Mexico, then obviously the greatest resistance is going to come from Texas. Texas has a history, and by the way, wasn't there a TV series out or HBO special called The Sons of Texas? I think there was or something, or is coming out, and I thought that was very prophetic in its timing. So it's because of the border, it's because of the strength of the people, it's because you're obviously a God-fearing state historically, with minor exceptions in some of the politics, and that's the idea of all of the assets that are available in Texas, meaning they are.
Oh, it's definitely its own standalone country, and the U.S. surpassed a year ago Saudi Arabia in global production. That's mainly Texas is the biggest oil producer in the world. It has its own infrastructure. They look at the demographics, and they know politically Texas is not going to say yes to the New World Order, and so Jade Helm is a dry run. We're not demonizing the military. It's there to condition them as well. Rich in Ohio, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hi, Alex and Steve.
Welcome.
What a combination. It's great to talk to both of you guys at the same time. You guys are excellent. I watch your videos and, I connect the dots.
Thank you, brother.
You're both skirting around the big dots. You both see it, but you don't see it.
Well, hey, you're on the air. No, don't need to preface it. Got a minute?
And then look at Richard Shaw's new production on the Torah codes. And these are the two biggest dots that are interconnected that you're missing.
I've been on the air for 20 years, and I'm always hearing about Planet X. I know there's a Kuiper belt, there's an asteroid belt. I know we get struck by big objects. I know it's real, but people are always saying it's coming in 2-3 years, and it just becomes this all-encompassing thing. I know governments are dug in, 4 big collisions, comets, you name that. So I know that's a real threat. Yellowstone, supervolcano, all of it. But to just say it's this and it's going to happen, I don't think we can say that. Steve Quayle?
I agree with you, Alex. I hear about Yellowstone's going to blow any minute. I fly down there almost weekly sometimes. I'm down there. It's not ready to blow. The bottom line is it doesn't do you good to worry about Planet X if you're going to get wiped out, in August, September, should Jade Helm go active. The timing is always the issue.
Stay there, Steve. Back in 70 seconds. I want you to finish up. SteveQuayle.com, Alex Jones, Infowars.com. Nightly News Tonight, 7. The over-the-top nature of reality is why so many people just can't wake up, because it is legendary, epic, what's happening. And let's say we're exaggerating, and half of it's true. It's still over-the-top insane. And unfortunately, I think it's probably worse than we're saying in many respects. The elite have gone insane like Caligula. I want to go to Max, Mike, and others here in just a moment. And I want to give final comment real quick after that to Steve Quayle. I really appreciate riding shotgun with us today. Max has a question for Steve Quayle on weather weapons. Go ahead.
Hi, Alex Jones and Quayle Man. I was wondering with the weather weapons they use, electrofrequency, magnetism, microwaves, and also chemicals, do those interfere also with I naturally would assume so, the human body and mind, and also a further extension of MK Ultra.
Are you asking me if it can affect the human mind?
If they're also used to affect the human mind, yes.
Thank you, Max.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry, Alex's phone broke up or something. I could barely hear.
Yeah, that's why I let him go. His phone went bad. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. There are so many studies. You can go on the internet, electronic mind control. Also, it's possible to produce heart attacks. I mean, they have electromagnetic weapons, and I believe that's what they used on Breitbart when they killed him within 5 or 10 minutes after National Defense Authorization Act, 1867 was in place. Andrew Breitbart was dead.
What about Michael Hastings and blowing his car up? I mean, they really are killing people.
Yeah, for a certainty, and I've done my homework, Alec. It's just on Weather Wars. People say, well, they can't do that. I'm just telling you, they can, and when I've spent, I'm looking at my, 400, 500 footnotes, whatever there is, the point is yes, they can, yes, they are, and yes, they will.
We're not in Kansas anymore, as I say every day. I mean, we are in a futuristic weirdo land, and the public still thinks we're back in 1950. We're not. Let's talk to, let's go ahead and talk to Drew in Missouri. You're on the air with Steve Quayle. Go ahead.
Yeah, man, great talking to you two. Real quick, my question is, I got 2 small kids, and I want to be prepared for this upcoming Civil War. What are the 3, maybe 3 top things you suggest a guy should do? I got a farm, I can prepare and self-sustain. What do you suggest, like guns and ammo, silver and gold, stockpile food and water?
Yeah, by the way, they've been holding gold down. It's starting to go back up. Steve Quayle, what would you do, the top things to get ready for the unraveling of society, which we know is coming? The only question is when.
Right. Well, this is going to sound extreme, but at the time, when I say extreme, at some point, all of us have to throw our smartphones away, okay? That's true. That's a radio tracking beacon.
Oh, yeah, they track you everywhere you go with it.
Yeah, but the number one, food first. What I'm telling everybody, Alex, food prices are going to rise. Food will be available, but at nothing near recognizable prices. So no matter what a budget is, I know the farmer has got food and stuff stored up. You have to have a form of self-defense. You must absolutely, and be familiar with it. I'm sorry, a father is charged biblically to protect his family. And Alex, you've gone on record, I've gone on record, there's nobody, as long as we're alive and God gives us grace and breath, that are going to harm the...
That's right, and it's not we're looking for violence. You've just got to be ready to kill for your family and already be preset that you're not going to think about it when the time comes, or you'll be dead.
Absolutely. The other thing you've got to think about is having a secondary location. Everybody needs a back door. By back door, if you have land, sir, make sure that you have other areas on your land beside the home. The point is that, you've got to get a realistic working knowledge of the things that disappear first, and you want to be where everyone else isn't when the cash, or killing cash. So the only way people outside of the system who won't take the mark of the beast will be able to do any type of commerce is with gold and silver. There's an attack on that. They've kept it down. It's getting ready to move, and we're watching that in the last 3 days.
That's right. I want to have you up very soon, if you can do it, Steve, to break down, because you're a top prepper, one of the main founding guys. You never talk about that, about just the war on individualism, on cash, on farming, on the family. I mean, we can see the systematic takeover. SteveQuayle.com.
back in the 1950s, most people aren't aware of it, but there was a scientific storm in America all through the late 50s about this thing out there in space because the astronomers were all watching it, and that was back when they weren't afraid to talk about it. It was in the science magazines. I mean, I had a subscription to, like, Popular Science, and hell, it was on the front cover of the magazine one day in, like, 1961. And I was really excited when I saw it because here's this giant red planet on the horizon of the California coast and a humongous tidal wave coming in towards the coast. And having grew up in the mountains of the Sierras,